If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank Latirzo and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank Latirzo and Jack Hirsch.
And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fist. My name is Frank Latirzo, former writer, full-time observer, joined by former 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association, Mr. Jack Hirsch himself, sporting his Manny Pacquiao shirt. How you doing, Jack?
Real good, Frank. We're going to talk about Manny a little later, obviously, because we're going to talk about the Hall of Fame with our special guest. And Manny was the biggest single name, at the Hall of Fame this year. And it's ironic because Manny does fight next month as well, so it's kind of a rarity to get inducted into the Hall of Fame and then make a comeback after it was announced. But that's the case here.
Well, Jack, there's two stories, but before we get to that, you said something about a special guest.
Yeah. We have a Hall of Fame inductee. So we could keep.
Do I know him?
Yeah. But I think Frank, once you saying you'd rather have Manny Pacquiao, I'd rather have Randy Gordon on. So
I'd rather have Randy on too, because we could talk about. Yeah, we could talk about boxing, real boxing, for hours and hours with Randy. But yes, that'll be good. Randy's coming on at 7:15. Jack, the two stories are, and they're almost diametrically opposite. Vasily Lomachenko retired this past Thursday, June 5th. In a nutshell, he did everything the right way. He only had 21 fights, but 16 or 17 were title fights. He covered a lot of ground. Again, did everything the right way, always in shape, never pulled games with weights or anything like that, never badmouthed opponents after a win or a loss. He goes out with a title with his health, wealth, and respect, and a lot of money. And then on the other side of that, we have former IBF lightweight champion Keyshawn Davis, who lost his title this week. He didn't fight, but worse than that, Jack, he didn't make weight. And the fight was canceled, and he was stripped.
I'm not going to criticize you for this, Frank, but I could knock you, but I got to knock myself because we didn't prepare for this. We knew we were going to talk about these two topics. We shouldn't have even mentioned Keyshawn Davis's name in the same breath as the great Vasily Lomachenko. We should have just talked Lomachenko and then first brought up Davis's name. But of course, we have Randy coming on 7:15, and we want to talk about the Hall of Fame weekend. That was big story in boxing this past weekend as well. Pacquiao getting inducted and Randy and some of the other Hall of Famers. But the thing about it, Vasily Lomachenko, you told me before the show you felt this retirement's going to stick. I'm always skeptical, Frank. This is boxing with retirements. Let's look at the greatest fighters in boxing history and see that they ever announce a retirement and then come back. Your favorite, Sugar Ray Robinson, retired, came back. Muhammad Ali retired, 2-3 times, came back. Sugar Ray Leonard, he had a few retirements, he came back. Maybe Lomachenko be different. Sometimes as an exception. I know when Marvin Hagler announced his retirement, I said he's going to come back without a doubt. And he didn't come back. Maybe it'll stick. I hope it does stick.
Jack, I like that you said that, but here's the caveat. Name a foreign-born fighter, non-American, who pulled the same shenanigans as Ali, Leonard, and Robinson. Other than Vitaly Klitschko coming back after a 3-year hiatus, not many of the foreign guys come back, Jack, because they have other interest. They're usually invested well, and they have a life outside of boxing, where I find that a lot of the American guys, especially the ones we named, Jack, once they leave the limelight, they get bored. They don't have hobbies or many interests. They miss the attention and the adulation. I think from what I've read, Lomachenko is pretty well invested. He dedicated the last fight he had to his dad, where he got the title back or defended the title. I forget if he won it back or he defended it, but I think he won it back. Right. And I just don't think he's going to come back, Jack. It's been a year, and I would be willing to bet a nice piece of change we never see Lomachenko fight again. And it's ironic, with the span of 5 days, we had 4 lightweight belt holders. Now we only have 2, and there are 2 vacant titles, Lomachenko's and Davis's.
You make a good point about the foreigners. I never even gave that any thought, but usually they don't announce a retirement. They just decide they're not fighting anymore. Yeah, exactly. If it does stick this retirement, what's his legacy? All-time great and top 10 in any category. If someone told you Lomachenko was a top 25 pound-for-pound fight of all time, how would you?
How would I handle that? I don't think I'd have a hard time with that, Jack. I think you could make a case he's in the top 10 at 126 and at 130. Some people might have him in the top 5. The guy was hell on wheels. There was no doubt about that. He had no weakness, really, always in shape. And I would have a hard time picking against him at those weights. I mean, let's face it. We know he fought 135 because he was older, and that's where the money in the fights were. But I don't know. At his best at 126. I mean, does Sanchez beat him? I would probably pick Sanchez. But as you love to say, if they had a series, Lomachenko could win one. Willie Pep and Sadler, they beat him. They might win more times than he would win, but he'd win against them. And if you go at 130, Chavez or Aguayo or Mayweather, he's in the fight with those 3 also.
Okay, so we wish Vasily Lomachenko a lot of luck in retirement, and we hope it sticks too. We hope it sticks at age 38, for him to come back and get the itch to fight again. Kind of hope not. There was a fiasco that took place this week at Frank that I feel very strongly about. You feel very strongly about this topic on a regular basis, a fighter who deliberately doesn't try to make weight, the advantage that he has. And I know how critical you are of Ryan Garcia, not really trying to make weight for the Devin Haney fight, but there's a difference involved with what happened this weekend with Keyshawn Davis, not making weight for his fight with Edwin De Los Santos. The difference is De Los Santos didn't accept the money. He didn't accept the money to go through with the fight. Okay?
I love that.
He deserves all the sympathy. Devin Haney doesn't deserve any sympathy at all as far as I'm concerned. He took the money. Bill Haney was a pig and took the money. He took the money. He was greedy.
Jack.
He was greedy. Bill Haney took the money. Samson Lukowitz, De Los Santos' manager, was going to take the money, and then they changed their minds.
I am so glad they did that, Jack, because if they lose, they blame the weight. It's a tainted win either way. No, they'll get another shot. I am so glad they went out on principles and they didn't count or they didn't let Davis manipulate the game at the scales, as we have seen so many fighters do. And again, you're right. I am a stickler on that, Jack, because, a lot of times people think under certain circumstances that the fights are set up and fixed. I don't believe it's like the WWF or the WWE. But what is set up about some fights is when guys fight, who judges them, where they fight, and the weight. And one way of manipulating a fight is the weight. It's the oldest trick in the book, but because the money's so big today, some guys, the Haney's fell for it. De Los Santos didn't. Hats off to them. I am so glad that they set a precedent and walked away.
And what gets me to, we thought Keyshawn Davis, you and I, was potentially a superstar down the line.
Yep.
Potentially. He had all the talent in the world. He comes 4.5 pounds over the weight, okay, for his lightweight title defense. Okay, he's 4.5 pounds over the weight, and the fight's canceled. And this clown is in the audience laughing, joking around, reportedly eating his popcorn. It's all a big joke to him. But the worst part of it's afterwards. He sees his brother. Okay, I think it was Kelvin, the other brother, not Keon,
Right.
who lost to Nahir Albright. He loses a decision to the two Davis brothers, not the one who fought. They're threesome. They claim they're like a corporation. They attack Albright out of nowhere in the locker room, out of nowhere. Albright wasn't calling them names. Nothing was going down. This was strictly a mugging, Frank. It was an assault. It was an assault. It wasn't like an argument going back and forth and one swung on the other. I don't condone that, but at least we understand that. You know, nothing, you know what provoked them? Their brother losing the fight. So I'm gonna tell you this. Keyshawn Davis is a hoodlum straight out. If the authorities don't do anything about this, I mean, the legal authorities should be stepping in. This is an assault, Frank.
I think that we're going to see that as a resolute after that. I do think that's going to happen. But Jack, get back to the weight. I don't know. I don't think you follow MMA that much, but there was a big fight this weekend between the women, between Kayla Harrison and Pina. I forget her last name. And Kayla Harrison came down from 160 to 135. And she said she actually has to pray to get the weight off those last couple pounds. She said she thought the last pound, she goes, if God doesn't take it off, I can't take it off. But she endured and did everything she could to make weight, where this guy Davis, it appears, I don't want to attack him, but it appears that he didn't. And to me, that's just a mindset, and that looks bad on him.
Well, let me tell you too, Frank. Terrence Crawford sadly came to Davis's defense, and people don't understand. Sometimes you try and your body says you can't. I understand that if he missed it by 1.5 pounds and he really thought he was going to make weight, he was going to do everything in his power. But you come in 4.5 pounds over the weight limit, he had to know he wasn't going to make the weight. At some point before the weigh-in, you call up the promoter, you call up the sanctioning body, you say, look, you call up your opponent, your people call up your opponent's people, look, I tried, I can't make weight. He should have known this a week ago or something and saying, look, I got to be honest, I've tried, I just can't physically do it anymore. Okay, that would
Which is what he said. He outgrew the weight.
4.5 pounds up, but he knew that before the weigh-in, clearly before. And then hit that hoodlum attack. He took it all as a big joke, not making the weight.
Yeah, I'm very disappointed, Jack, in that mindset. That doesn't look good down the road for him in the future with a mindset like that. He said he's been making the weight for 4 years and he just can't do it anymore. Look, maybe that's true, but that's just not a good attitude to have. And, you know, I guess he's going to go up to 140 now, and there'll be plenty of fights there for him, so we'll see.
Okay, I'm looking.
I agree, Joe. His attitude, it did stink. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and it happened in his hometown of Virginia. You know, having a home base, the people that loved him there, supported him his whole career. And I don't want to hear this, Frank, about mental problems, not understanding mental issues. Because if we're going to condone, you know, one person two people, him and his brother, assaulting someone else, not being provoked by that person, outside of that person, Albright defeated their brother fairly in a sporting contest. That's not provoking. And I don't want to hear he snapped or whatever. I mean, give me a...
No, that's a sign of a bad guy. That's a bad guy.
Could you imagine after Bob Foster knocked out Mike Quarry, if Jerry wasn't fighting Ali later that night, the Quarry brothers went in backstage and started pummeling Bob Foster.
Jimmy and Jerry went after... Yeah, that would be... Yeah, it'd be...
It's outrageous. outrageous what he did. But the sad part about it, Frank, and I hate saying this because we do a boxing show, boxing being the gutter sport that it is, and the networks having absolutely no character, no class, are going to arrange an all-bright Keyshawn Davis fight. They'll hype, they'll hype it up. They'll take advantage of this type of activity because it gives them a storyline to watch. And in all honesty, there would be a little more interest than normal. But it's there'll be no ethics involved.
Just think if we had more Pacquiao's and Lomachenkos. I hate to say it, Jack, but it's the American entitled, spoiled brat syndrome that we don't see with the European guys and guys, other foreigners that come here from other countries to realize how lucky they are, how the opportunities that they have, and they take full advantages of it, like we saw with Lomachenko and now Manny again. And then Davis just is a self-entitled brat, and he's going to be very hard to root for. So if I was advising him, I might say, look, you kind of blew it. You can't be Terrence Crawford now. So now you got to be Mayweather and adopt the bad guy mantra, and maybe that'll make you some money.
Yeah.
And speaking of Mayweather, Jack, again, as much as I have some issues with Floyd, I must say this. He never missed weight. I mean, he messed around with Marquez to get an advantage, but he never missed weight, and he turned pro in 96. He retired in 2015. He was never out of shape one day for those 19 years.
Yeah.
What, you got text here? Is Randy backing out? He's not coming on?
Randy, you got to get this with our producer, Sonia. You can't just text me an email now. We got everything.
I didn't. I was kidding, Jack. I didn't know. I was just messing.
That's Randy. Our producer Sonia, drop Randy a line. At Randy Fight Club. Okay, even though she did it, Sonia's sharp. She's sharp. She's sharp. She's effective. She's good.
Thank you, guys. I got you. I'll send it again.
Send it again. Sonia is good. Sonia is good.
Yes, there's no doubt about that. But we'll get Randy on. I want to ride him a little bit, but it'll be fun. He'll have a lot to say about what we just talked about. And then you and him can do your old boys network and talk about the IBF or the International Boxing Hall of Fame, which I have still not yet made, which I have to get up there one of these years before I die.
Well, I've only missed 3 years since it came in existence. And
1990 was the first year?
1990 was the first year. But the part about the Hall of Fame, the humbling part about it, I mean, the legends that I sat and I talked with in that private time with in the early years who are now gone. I mean, I sat down and had a conversation and did a story on Jimmy McClellan. Can you believe it, Frank? Jimmy McClellan, 1930s lightweight champion.
Ike Williams went to a couple too, didn't he?
I said with Ike Williams, same thing. I spent time with Ike Williams, Kid Gavilan. I mean, Gene Fulmer, Archie Moore, Carmen Basilio. I mean, how many legends do we have today that are comparable to those guys? Roberto Duran is considered a true legend. Okay.
Duran, Leonard Hearns. I think Michael Spinks is in that category.
But all those guys are very special. But are they as special do today's fans look at them the way we looked at Archie Moore and Kid Gavilan? No, I'm just asking. I'm not sure.
I'm thinking, Jack, I think those fighters, the modern fighters are equal to those guys, but boxing's more of a niche sport now than it was then. So maybe not.
Yeah,
and they're more accessible, or they're I should say not more accessible because they're not, but they're seen more because there are more avenues now for athletes to be seen, more shows and events. But they were bigger stars back then because let's face it, when Archie Moore was fighting and Gavilan and Ike Williams, what were the big sports? Boxing, baseball, college football, and horse racing, right?
Yeah.
That's
Well,
not the case today,
I mean, I was never a big horse racing fan. I don't know what about
but it was
you,
one of the
Frank.
big 3 or 4 back in the day.
Yeah, no, I got into a debate on our debate show a couple of years ago with Dr. Paul Semendinger. He's a baseball guy. He has the podcast about the Yankees on this network.
Right.
He's written books, a book on Roy White. He wrote a book on, players only play one game for the Yankees. Which sport has a greater tradition? Boxing or baseball? I argued on behalf of boxing, but I can understand baseball getting a nod as well. But something about boxing, I just feel the tradition is greater because we could go back to Jack Johnson, Jim Jeffries, 1910. No one cares about the World Series in 1910. I mean, when baseball really started to become truly big, I think it would be like in the 1920s with Babe
With the
Ruth,
Yankees.
with the Yankees, and boxing was popular before that with Jim Jeffries, before the turn of the last century.
Well, when Dempsey was champ, the biggest stars were he and Babe Ruth, right?
Yeah, but Babe Ruth and Dempsey made a lot more money than Babe Ruth. Think of that. And Babe Ruth played a lot more games. I mean, those were the two big names. Think of what boxers make. Think of when Gene Tunney fought Jack Dempsey after he beat him. He got a check for 990,000. He wrote out a check for 10,000 so he could have an even million. And think of it. In the 1960s, Mickey Mantle, maybe the biggest icon, was getting 100,000 a year. In the 1960s.
So, Jack, when did it change? I think you're right, but I think eventually it changed. I don't think that's the case today. I mean, who's the biggest star in baseball today?
Ohtani.
Ohtani. Okay, he's on the Dodgers, right?
Yeah.
All right, and who's the biggest star in boxing?
He got 70 million a year, but he took deferred money. So he's getting more like 47 million in reality.
Who's the biggest star in boxing today? Is it Canelo?
I don't know. That's a great question. You stumped me. Yeah, normally it's a Canelo. I think Canelo lost his edge. How does this sound? The Canelo Crawford winner. If one of them wins decisively, I think that'll be, your undisputed biggest star, going forward.
Okay, let's just say Canelo wins. Ohtani's over here and Canelo's here, and there's a line for pictures and autographs. What's a bigger line?
Ohtani. But who's getting paid?
Neither one are American, so you can't use that.
For Canelo's getting paid more than Ohtani for his fight with Crawford. Canelo's getting a reported 150 million for that one fight, and Ohtani's getting 70 million a season. Just the thoughts of Canelo.
So if you go by the money, then you would say boxing, but I don't know, Jack. I don't know. There's not many dinosaurs like you, me, and Randy around. We're getting on, and when we go, Jack, just think it'll be the Mayweather crowd that will be writing the history of boxing.
I'm going to give Randy a call right now, Frank. Randy G. Originally, I told him 7:30, but then we changed it to 7:15. That's all I could think of. Randy's busier than a politician running for major office, I got to tell you. Hey, Randy, you coming? I have you on. I'm live on with Frank Laterzo now. Are you coming on? The link, it was that you got the email. Take a look. Okay. Yeah, okay, Randy. Okay, Randy is he's looking for the link there. So he said it wasn't sent to him, but I know Sonia sent it out there. Maybe it went to spam or something. That's all I could think of. Okay, but in any event, boxing talk continues. I'm going to want Randy.
Excuse me, guys. So I don't think you guys saw my message. I'm sorry. Excuse me, gentlemen. I messaged Randy twice. He messaged me back on the same email, responding to the link itself, and said he didn't get my email. So I don't know what's going on, but I sent it again. He literally used the same email I sent him and emailed me back.
Well, Randy's been hanging out with me lately, so that's why I probably wore off on him because I make,
Okay.
you know how tech savvy I am, Sonia.
Jack messes up every week.
Yeah.
So on the
I guess
message. So
I'm
we'll give Randy
I'm
a
wearing
pass.
off on him. Yeah.
Okay, guys. I'm going to get him, though. I'm still
Randy's
working
got
with
his
him.
lovely wife, Ronnie. Ronnie will show him. She'll figure it out for Randy, okay?
See, you guys have kids and grandkids to help you out with this stuff. I don't. I have to go through myself and make all kind of mistakes.
Yeah, and I feel for you in this sense, Frank, when you try to order fight and you're having a hard time ordering it, you want to give them your money and you're having a hard time.
Isn't that amazing? I'm saying here, rip me off. Come and rip us off. And no, they won't.
Yeah. But Canelo Crawford, that's obviously pay-per-view. What do you think they're charging for that? $89.95? That would be my guess.
I say it's over 90. I think it's either 90. I think it'll be 94.99 or 99.95.
This fight, the more I think of it, Crawford and Canelo, this truly is the moment of truth for Crawford. I mean, I disagree with your Frank. Well, if he loses, no big deal. This is his chance to join the all-time greats. And the only way to do it is not to fight a good fight and lose a close decision. No, that doesn't do anything for an argument. But you beat Canelo. And if you beat him soundly, okay?
He goes down with Larry Hearns.
But there's someone lurking in the background, Frank. Money Mayweather's going to say, well, I beat Canelo when he was younger. He's this.
Yeah, I made him come down in weight where he was a skeleton. I beat him before he got good. And Crawford can say, well, I beat him when he was a man and near his peak at 168 pounds, and there were no weight gain or no weight stipulations. But I think Canelo takes a hit if he loses, Jack, because if he loses, people will look at his record and say, there's a good case that Lara beat him. I don't know anyone that thinks he beat G the first time, let alone a draw. He lost to Bivol and he lost to Mayweather. If he loses to Crawford, people are going to say, the 3 or 4 best guys that he fought, hung an L on him or should have gotten an L, at least based on what transpired in the ring.
And it was interesting, the heavyweight fight, Usyk, Daniel Dubois next week. I feel Daniel Dubois is a threat. You're more like dismissive of his chances. It seems like you're not.
I don't give him a shot.
Wow. I just feel, he's got to be, he'll be competitive in there. I do give him a chance. I'm probably not going to pick him. There's a new Hall of Famer.
We're finally here.
Yeah. Well,
I didn't get a chance, Randy. Congratulations. Well deserved. A little long overdue, but you know what? Doesn't matter now.
No.
You're a Hall of Famer.
Thanks, guys. A lot of people have been saying that to me, and probably over the weekend, I had a few dozen people say that to me. It was long overdue. Well, that's very nice to even think that, but I never was concerned with that. I said to myself, I'm so busy in boxing that if it doesn't happen, it's not ruling my life. I go there every year, and I love being around all the fight people. Jack, you know that, and it just happened, and here we are. And hey, guys, look
at that.
Laterzo jealous now. I mean, I'm envious. I gotta admit that is the equivalent of a Super Bowl World.
You'll get in, Jack. You'll get in.
Yes,
yeah.
Jack
will get in.
No. This is Randy's career is. You know about Randy's career to analyze it. He could have gotten in for just one of several things that he did that if you break it up, and the most underrated, with all the things he did, being a commissioner, editor, Ring Magazine, and, on and on and on. But the one area where Randy hasn't been given the credit, is as a broadcaster. He's a heck of a broadcaster. He makes the fights enjoyable to listen to. I feel like when he's doing a fight, I feel I'm there with my friend talking boxing. He never talks down on the listener. And that's the one thing with Randy. I mean, his nickname's Commish. So people think of, well, he's a, commissioner in an administrative role. And then they hear Ring Magazine, which has all this amazing tradition. But just like as a broadcaster himself, I mean, pure delight to listen to. And obviously, Randy just talking boxing,
He doesn't remember, Jack, when he used to do the fights with Sam Rosen at the Shore. I used to try to suck up to him and go talk to him about after the fights and try to impress him with my knowledge. And I got to admit, he gave me a minute or two here and there.
Okay, I got to put you on the spot, Frank, a Randy question. If this was a battle of two all-time greats, who would you pick? These two in a class of themselves, Randy against Harold Letterman. Who loves boxing more? They're in a
Randy.
class of themselves. You give Randy the edge. Is it
I didn't have to think about that.
Okay.
Now, I don't know Howard I didn't know Howard like I know Randy, but I don't know anybody like Randy who has been so consistent with his passion for it, where I know that myself, I mean, I did a post on Larry Holmes winning the title today, and I started off with, it's hard to stay interested and to care about the sport the way it is today, where Randy watches every fight that's out there and could talk about the undercards of them, where I can't do that anymore. At one time I could, I can't now.
And by the way, the reason it took Randy so long to get in, for whatever reason, he wasn't on the ballot. So if someone's not on the ballot, they can't get voted for. But the first time he was on the ballot, he got in. Kind of reminded me a little of years ago with Joey Maxim. Joey Maxim wasn't on the ballot a number of years. The first time he was on the ballot, he was voted in.
If he would have campaigned harder for Jackie Tawanda, I think he would have got in sooner.
Well, that only delayed a couple of years, maybe. I don't know.
Funny, but the only
Randy, tell us about the weekend. Yeah,
he was about to start. Jack, let him breathe.
You mentioned Jackie Tonawanda. I believe there's two fighters now in the Hall of Fame with an 0-1 record, me and Jackie Tonawanda.
Oh, yeah. Randy was,
but you didn't pass yourself off as the Jewish Ali.
Listen, I had to remind Randy beforehand about the fist casting, whether it should just be done for fighters. And then I said to Randy, Randy, you had your one pro fight, so technically that made you eligible for the fist casting. They said only former fighters in there.
I didn't think about that until after the fist casting. Because, I mean, I went in with Ross Greenberg, and we were both hoping that we were going to be able to get our fist cast. But now that I actually am in, and it's not going to affect, whether I fought or I had 39 amateur fights. I had one pro fight. So I did fight. And I mean, that one fight, I'm 0-1. But you're right, Jack. I was a fighter. Maybe I should have had my fist cast. I just think it would have been cool.
Okay,
did they cast your fist?
No, the two observers, me and the great Ross Greenberg, neither one of us. No, you guys stay there. No, and this is what I don't understand, because Jerry Cooney and I were going to do our Sirius XM show from Turning Stone Casino, and I was told, "Oh, you can't do it from there because that's the time we're going to be doing the fist casting." So they had me move the show over to that area, and yet then Ed Brophy said, "No, we only do fighters." Well, maybe next year that's going to change.
I guess he means, the fighters that got in as a fighter.
you know, you have to be. I'm in the Hall of Fame. I mean, and I think if you did fight and you make it into the Hall of Fame, if you did fight, I mean, even if you get in there as a non-participant, if you did fight, maybe they should take my little tiny fist.
Or do a microphone cast or something like that, or a pen for your coverage.
Or
Now,
do a cast of my mouth.
the average person who's not a boxing fan, who's going to hear, well, you got in the Hall of Fame, they're going to ask you, well, who else got in? And what made getting inducted this year special, you did have a mega star who got in the same year. And as much as the other names we revere who got in, it's that one superstar that seems to elevate, all the inductees to an extent. And that's, of course, you see my shirt, Randy. I got the Pacquiao shirt. I was looking for Randy Gordon T-shirt at the collectors. They didn't have any with the fighters. So I had to settle. I had to settle on Manny Pacquiao at the collectors convention. When I was there. Okay, well, I didn't see it there, Randy. It wasn't there. I guess they sold out so quick. I couldn't get to it.
They did. They sold out very quick. Because I went to buy a few more. I got like 2 of them. I wanted to buy about 5 more for my kids.
Yeah.
They were gone.
Yeah.
All right, Randy, let's talk some boxing. What's your take on Keyshawn Davis?
I'm very disappointed in him. I just got off the air a little while ago on my Sirius XM show. We had Brad Jacobs on, the COO of Top Rank. And I think that Keyshawn Davis, one of the 3 lightweight champions, I really was very high on his ability.
So were Jack and I.
I was so high on his ability that I've been saying that should he go one-on-one, head-to-head with Shakur Stevenson, Keyshawn Davis wins. And I said, you know what? I believe he would outpoint Gervonta Davis. Then, and when Jerry Cooney and I first interviewed him, first time, it was shortly before the Olympics in 2020, shortly before COVID had even hit. I don't think COVID had even hit yet.
COVID was March of 2020.
Yes, and we interviewed him right about the time. Yeah, it was right about that time. And then he didn't go to the Olympics. He turned pro, I guess, the following year. And he lost about 3 out of 4 fights, I think it was, to Andy Cruz. But when Jerry and I interviewed him, he was such a nice, low-key, yes, sir, no, sir. He turns pro, and in the very first interview that I did with him as a pro, we were having a great interview until I asked him about Andy Cruz. Now, if you don't like a fighter, there are ways, but I guess only Ali could do this. If you ask him about, let's say, Joe Frazier, what do you want to know about Joe Frazier? Joe Frazier, no. And he would play with you. You could see that he was putting him down, but in the Ali kind of way. I asked Keyshawn Davis about Andy Cruz, and he exploded. He said, don't you know anything about professional boxing? He's an amateur fighter. He can only fight 3 rounds. When I fight him, I'm a 10-round fighter. And right now, I'm a 10-round fighter. I would beat him. Don't ever ask me about him again. Whoa. And so
that was a window to things going on.
So since that time, we've noticed that he has some explosive temper in there. And all I know from what I was given by Brad Jacobs, he didn't make weight, didn't even come close. So first of all, what's going on with that? How it drives, I've heard you guys too talking about it. I know how you guys feel about not making weight, but as the former commissioner in me and everything, I'm just appalled, especially with a world champion who knows he's got to make 135. How could he be coming in? What was he doing 2-3 days before that? Don't tell me, oh, I checked my weight and I was 134. That's a crock. He was not at weight the day of the fight, the day before the fight. You're checking your weight all the time. I don't know how they could do that. He's got to get fined. He absolutely, I mean, Mark Kriegel, one of the ESPN announcers, he was up with us in Canastota. I did a fun interview with him about his Mike Tyson book, and he had to run out because he had to get down to Virginia. It took a lot of people and hurt a lot of people because of what he did. But in the dressing room, and I'm going to say allegedly all the way because I don't know. I wasn't there. This is all hearsay. But apparently when his brother lost his fight, the dressing room was right next door to the guy who beat his brother. And while there was nothing but doom and gloom in the Davis locker room right next door, in the next dressing room was the celebration going on. And apparently Keyshawn Davis at that point went into the dressing room where you can't be there. But I guess this is the Virginia Commission. A lot of commissions, I know if it was with me, my inspectors never would have allowed that to happen. But he did go in and allegedly put his hands on the opponent, Albright, put his hands on him, like went for his face, headbutted him, allegedly. And we don't know where this stands now. But if this was Keyshawn Davis, I mean, if I'm the commissioner, I'm jumping on this guy.
Has to. You can't do that. Can't put your hands on people.
No. In the ring.
It becomes a legal matter to do something like that. It wasn't like two guys just talking to one another, one's provoking the other, and it gets a little out of hand. That we understand. But to just go into the other dressing room and assault his brother's opponent, and what did Albright do wrong? He won the fight. That's it. That gives a license to anyone to come into any dressing room and attack.
And
it's a bad look.
I didn't get.
Randy, we were talking about the contrast that we had with the lightweight division this week. We have Davis and his shenanigans, and then this past Thursday, 4 days ago, one of your favorites, Vasily Lomachenko, retires as a title holder with his health, his wealth, and his respect. And I predict, and I told this to Jack earlier, we will never see Lomachenko box again. Not as a pro and three-time champion.
3 more years, he's going to be on the ballot. Less than that, because he's already been out a year. I did ask Brad Jacobs about that. I said, okay, Brad, leaving the Keyshawn Davis talk behind, because they said they have to sit down with Keyshawn, because I think they realize that he's totally, at this point, something's going on. And look, we've seen other fighters have stuff going on.
Broner.
Ryan Garcia has had stuff going on. We don't know what it is that's going on, but apparently he has a very bad temper, and they're going to have to sit him down and give him the ABCs of life, and what you can do in boxing and what you can't. You want to fight? Fight in the ring. You want to fight? There's weight class. You're the lightweight champ. You want to make 135, or you ready to move up? You can't be doing this. You sign a contract, you got to make the weight. But Lomachenko, then I said, Brad, changing gears here. While I was in Canastota, all of a sudden I hear about Lomachenko packing it in, which for months now, I've had a feeling we'd never see him again.
Right.
I was so crazy about watching this guy. I mean, I've been in the gym when he trained, and Frank, Jack, you guys have watched a million fighters train. He trained the way everybody else does, and then some. Then he did some. I mean, he would do handstands, which in itself, just to do a handstand with your feet pointed towards the ceiling, holding himself straight up, then doing push-ups from that position. And I mean, we all know how hard, all of us, to get on the bars and do some pull-ups. Even one pull-up, most people can't do. He is ripping off 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 pull-ups. He was a physical freak.
He's a phenom.
He went underwater, I heard. I can't believe it's part of his training. Like, what, 4 minutes underwater, whatever they claim. It's insane. I know
He's an all-time great, Randy. Does he make the top 10 featherweights and junior lightweights? I told Jack earlier, I think he's in the top 10 at 126 and 130, and you could make a case that he's even higher.
I wish he had stayed at 126 and even 130. When he moved to 135, he was already out of his weight class.
Older and yeah.
This might sound a little bit like maybe totally absurd for me to say this, but you know, when you say, what do you think about this guy against this older fighter? I'm going to give you one. I think that in his prime, Willie Pep would have had a hard time beating in his prime Lomachenko at 126.
You know, Randy, you open up the door because Laterzo and myself have had 2 arguments going. We haven't spoken to you about it, so we want you to answer 2 questions because it's going back and forth. It can't even get settled with what you
2
say.
questions. I only know the one.
Well, I'll give you the first one. Who is a harder puncher, Tommy Hearns or Julian Jackson?
Boy, oh boy. I would have to say with that single shot, right hand has to be, I really believe it's Julian Jackson.
Laterzo.
He was a paralyzing hitter. I mean, in the late 70s, I was ringside for so many of Pepino Cuevas. I was there when Pepino Cuevas got knocked out with a pair of right hands by Tommy Hearns. And I remember going into that fight saying, I know that this guy is really being touted as a brutal puncher. We'll see. Let's see, because Pepino Cuevas can take it. He rocks him with the right hand, puts him away with the second one. I've asked Pepino Cuevas, when he used to come to the Hall of Fame, how hard would you rate Tommy Hearns? He said he can't even imagine getting hit harder than he got hit by Hearns. But I still think that Julian Jackson maybe brought it with one big punch a little bit more than Tommy.
So you'd rate him a harder pound for pound puncher?
Harder pound for pound puncher, yes. But I think that Tommy, I think that Tommy had almost a greater array,
a better repertoire.
Randy, that's the undercard. But the big question is this: we want to hear your opinion on. Laterzo and myself have been arguing. I don't know whether you're aware of this. Who would have won in their primes, both of them at their absolute peak? Kenny Norton against Ron Lyle.
Love it. Love the fight. I think that Ron Lyle, in his prime, and I guess when you ask these questions, who would have won? It's always who would have won in their prime. I think Ron Lyle.
Okay. Laterzo got me on that one.
I
So you
think
got one wrong and one right.
Well, wait. But if they fought, let's say 10 times, does
Nobody
Kenny win?
fights 10 times,
Kenny
Jack.
wins 7 out of 10, but Lyle wins the one big contest. If it was best 4 out of 7, this is the World Series. Then
Kenny,
does Kenny Norton win it then?
Norton
Kenny,
doesn't show up after he's knocked out the first time, so there'll never be 7 fights.
the thing about Kenny that a lot of us knew, I think, early on. I always believed that Ken Norton was going to have a problem whenever he started getting in with big punchers. And I mean, you saw what happened when he was in with George Foreman, and of course when he was in with Jerry Cooney. And I know that was at the end of the line, but I think that Jerry Cooney would have wiped Ken Norton out at any point, because that cross-arm defense, when you're like this, you're leaving this side of your face open.
And Cooney hits him to the body. He brings his hands down, then he hits him to the head.
Down here, he breaks ribs. Up here, bang, a short hook is going to take him right out of there. So I always thought that Ken Norton, and that's why I originally picked Jerry Quarry to beat Ken Norton, because I did believe that Jerry Quarry was going to get home with the hook. But he got cut up so early by Ken Norton. He never had
Randy, he took the fight on 10 days' notice. He okayed it in the bar. We both know that. With Jerry Quarry was shut.
He didn't take a main event at the Garden, Frank, on 10 days' notice.
He did, Jack, because Quarry was a substitute for Oscar Bonavina.
Yes.
Quarry was
10 days.
It was only like 10 days. Bonavina wanted more money.
Quarry was still a big name heavyweight. I know he'd lost to Joe Frazier the June before, okay? 9 months before he lost to Joe Frazier, but he was still a big name heavyweight. He didn't.
Oh, Jack, come on. Joe Frazier, I love Jerry, but Frazier ruined him. He ruined him. He ruined him, and then Quarry was done fighting. You see how fat he was for that fight? He okayed it with 10 days notice because he beat the crap out of Ken Norton in California sparring. There was bad blood between them. He never thought Norton was much, didn't think he had much of a heart, and started echoing the line that Larry Holmes said he made the career out of fighting Ali.
No, okay, man. I don't know factually for sure the timeline. So
Jack, he was a substitute for Oscar Bonavina.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it must have been more than 10 days notice.
It was 10 days.
No.
He didn't have time. He didn't have a training camp.
Okay. I'm corrected then. Okay.
Jerry Quarry was at that time being trained and guided by Gil Clancy, who was my guru. Giller was one of my best friends. Every week we would go out to breakfast, and he was telling me about Quarry. The Quarry is not in the best of shape for the Ken Norton.
Drinking a lot.
And he said, we intend to catch him early with the hook. The day of the fight, I was in Jerry Quarry's hotel room with Gil Clancy. And Gil is doing this and putting something over here and something over here. And what's that? And every time I'd ask him a question, he'd tell me. But then at one point, he rubbed something onto Jerry's eyebrows. And I said, what's that? He said, sometimes you just got to lay back, just keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, keep your mouth shut, Gordon. And I still to this day don't know what it was. But just then, Charlie Quarry walked in. Do you guys remember Charlie Quarry?
Oh, yeah.
She became a media darling because of how pretty she was, Miss Indiana and everything like that.
Yeah.
And she, for what I don't know to this day if she truly loved Jerry or just loved the fame and everything that was going with it and the money. Well, at that point, Jerry was kind of like just laying back in bed while Gil was working on him. Charlie walks in and looked at me and looked at Gil and goes, 5 guys. She takes her blouse off, removes her pants. She's got her panties and bra on. She gets into bed with Jerry, and Gil takes me by the arm and pulls me out.
Wow.
And we get into the hallway, and I looked at Gil and I said, "What the hell is going on here?" He said, "I hate her. I hate her. I wish he would just get rid of her." He said, "They're having sex now." I said, "Well, I guess, believe in that old adage."
Hey, Randy, that's
But
a great story. But now we have you here, I want you to settle something else. And this has nothing to do with me and Jack. Today's the anniversary of Holmes beating Norton. Okay. 47 years ago. On my page, there is a debate about Holmes maybe being rated a little too high, and he didn't fight Dokes, he didn't fight Page, he didn't fight Coetzee, and I pretty much laid out like those guys were in line to fight him, and then they lost, and he beat the guy that beat them. But a couple guys are holding it against Holmes that he didn't unify the title. I don't hold it against him. I don't know where Jack stands, but I have Holmes in the top 5 all-time greats. I don't hold it against him that he didn't unify the title.
He was heavyweight champion of the world. Stop this unification stuff, Frank. We all know Larry Holmes was the heavyweight champion.
Jack, but I'm telling you, there are guys out there that think he ducked Page, he ducked Witherspoon, he ducked Dokes, he ducked Jerry Coetzee, and I say to those guys, do you really think you could find anybody to take a bet on them if they were fighting Holmes? But where do you come in, Randy? Because I don't think it affects his legacy at all.
Neither do I. And I mean, look, you're speaking to a Larry Holmes guy. Larry Holmes, in my book, definitely, I'm with you, Frank, on this one. Top 10 heavyweights. I mean, not just top 10, but probably
he's my top 5 in there.
Top 5.
Actually, I have him 4th.
The jab, the best, and everything. And as far as fighting Michael Dokes, I probably was in Eastern Pennsylvania on at least a half dozen occasions to see Larry Holmes sparring with Dokes and a few other guys, top heavyweights at that time.
Leroy Diggs.
And yeah, and guys better than that. I mean, I saw, was back in the day before that, I saw Larry boxing with Ali. But when Larry was champion, he brought in a lot of guys. I got him, and this is still funny, and I joke with Cooney about this. I got Mitch Blood Green to be the sparring partner, the chief sparring partner for the Cooney fight. At that time, Jerry wasn't my brother like he is today. Larry Holmes was my guy. And I said, Larry, I got a perfect guy for you. And I got him Mitch Green. Shelley Finkel thanked me because he had him at that time, and he would have done anything just to get rid of him. And he said, I think you just did me a favor, because Don King is going to try to steal him from me. And guess what? I'm letting go as soon as Don King starts to pull.
Because he knew he was trouble.
But, oh, yeah. But, when you first...
But had ability.
Yeah. Well, Larry Holmes didn't fight Dokes because, remember, Larry was with Don King, Dokes was with Don King, and what Don was trying to do is get the WBA title, the WBC title, and he wasn't interested in Dokes. He was looking for as much money as he could get with Larry Holmes. And even in sparring, I was there in sparring one day when Dokes was sparring with Holmes, and Larry was pasting him with the jab. So I just, I don't think Larry Holmes was a guy who ducked people.
No, we got to basically wrap up, Randy, because when the last minute sits winding down. Our final flurries to thank you for coming on, congratulating you.
Absolutely.
Well deserved, Hall of Famer. The ring proves it, and everyone out there, that's boxing's equivalent of a Super Bowl and World Series ring. There's Randy's plaque, as seen in the museum. Okay, so congratulations to the latest inductee in the International Boxing Hall of Fame, Randy Gordon.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for
guys.
coming on, Commish. You're the man.
Thank you so much. This really was the biggest honor I've ever had in my life, and I'm gonna finish now writing my book, Glove Story.
All right, sir. See you soon.
Thank you so much, guys. I love you both.
Ditto. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll be back next week. Until then, Jack, have a good week, and we'll see you next time out.